Greetings and welcome to Calm Clear Conversations. I'm Christopher Johnson with Calm Clear Communications, and with me today is Princess Castleberry.
The
Now,
one and only.
all right, so the really long, it took two paragraphs. The really long introduction we are not going to cover today.
All right.
Princess is someone you should know, a speaker, a wellness coach,
Wellness consultant.
a wellness consultant. See, all right. I want to
Mhm.
make sure the phrasing is right because, hey, words matter.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Welcome.
Thank
So,
you.
all right. I understand what a speaker is.
Yes.
What's a wellness consultant?
Well, a wellness consultant is someone who helps you live a better life inside and outside of work. And so, where my focus has been over the past 6 months, and really I'm doubling down on this focus next year, is really helping organizations build that accountability for wellness, at an individual level and at a corporate level, building that accountability and really honestly just talking about the issues and facilitating the issues that people really want to talk about. Um, we see so many things published today on get well, live a well life. But what does that actually mean? So I'm bringing those practical discussions into corporations and doing some problem solving right there on the spot and building that dialogue between employees and their leaders and getting down to the real answers that are going to create a well environment.
Okay. Now, thank you for that. Now, let's back up just a little bit because we were talking right before we started this live broadcast.
Sure.
Um, we met years ago, all right, just a few years ago
A couple years
at
ago.
TEDxDetroit.
Yes.
And lo and behold, this past year, this past October 26th, I had the distinct pleasure of saying, please welcome to the TEDx Detroit stage, Princess Castleberry.
Music to my ears. I'm still smiling from ear to ear, right? So it was
So that was a phenomenal talk.
thank you. Thank you. That talk, that's a wellness talk. That talk honestly was born out of collaboration with a creative partner that I work with a lot. Her name is Shantae Hooks. She's a mindfulness and meditation expert. And we started thinking about our own wellness as Black women, as myself, a former corporate citizen. But we were thinking about what actually holds us back in the workplace. And a lot of times it's how we show up, it's our mindsets. And so that entire talk, which was called You Can Break Bad Agreements, was born out of the idea that we are raised with a whole host of familial and societal rules that dictate to us how we need to show up in the world. And sometimes those things and those rules are against our own interests. Sometimes they were previously great things for us that just don't serve us well. So that whole talk was about giving us permission to define what makes us well, how we want to show up in the world, and to communicate through it, right?
Mhm.
Because if we're presenting something new and trying to affect change, it collides with somebody else's view of the world. And the other part of that talk was really about our role as leaders in the workplace, in our homes, in society, in the world, about setting up environments that allow somebody to thrive. So I presented what we call the Dare to Care model, and but that whole talk was really about wellness, about personal risk management, personal accountability, and this sort of dual accountability that I see for wellness between individuals and corporations. So,
Okay. So a what's an example of a bad agreement? What's something that people don't think they can break, but it's really in their best interest to break it?
yeah, that you had a wonderful guest on a couple weeks ago that was talking about content creators over the age of 50. It's a bad agreement. It's a bad idea that somebody over the age of 50 can't be an extraordinary creative partner in this modern technological world. It's another bad agreement, one I really want to talk about, because it comes up all the time in my work, is this concept that younger employees, younger workers are lazy or self righteous and entitled, and have to go through the same steps that their parents or grandparents took to rise to the top. And that's a bad agreement. I hear it all the time. I hear it from in the nonprofit space, I hear it in the for profit space, public sector, where people think that the young people in our society, the young professionals, want to rise too quickly because we didn't rise that way. I think that's a horrible agreement. Yeah, I think it's a horrible agreement.
It is.
Build policies all around it, um, not realizing that when you tell a young person that a young person who was born with technology, when you tell a young person that even though you were born with a computer in your pocket and that computer advances our society in every human way possible, except it won't advance your career faster than it advanced your father's or your mother's. It just makes no sense. It doesn't serve any of us well. But there's a lot of people that believe that. I hear it all the time. So, yeah.
So society is at odds with a quote unquote growth mindset.
Yeah. All
Society has like these are our fixed agreements, and this is what has served us in the past,
mhm.
and they don't change.
And they never change. And it's presented. There is a real balance, though. Let's be real. There is tradition. There is the literal law. I'm talking about figurative laws, right?
Mhm.
But there is the literal law. So there are things that we have in place as a society to protect ourselves. There are things that we have in place in our families to protect our families. But when we talk about bad agreements, we talk about this idea that we've taken on entire personas. We have taken on entire systems of belief, and we go about our business and our lives as if nothing else could be true, not just for ourselves, but for others, right? I mean, what I
Yeah.
talked about at TEDx was this notion that my grandmother, my own grandmother, had raised me with, that because I was a Black woman at the time, she was talking to a Black child, but because I was a Black person, that I was going to have to work twice as hard as my white counterparts to receive what they receive in terms of pay, recognition. And very early in my career, I found that it was triggering me. It was triggering anxiety. It was triggering a lot of fear and worry. And it was really changing how I showed up in the workplace. And when I realized that those beliefs, it was just a belief. Nobody had actually ever said those things to me in the workplace. They had said things that triggered me and made me believe that what my grandmother was saying were true. But nobody ever came right out and said that to my face. So I decided to challenge it, but I challenged it here first,
Okay.
you know.
And see that that's really important. So part of being a wellness consultant, I would imagine, is what's going on up here in
So,
those beliefs.
yeah.
So that was something that caused you stress. That caused you. It's like,
Mhm.
all right, it was triggering that phrase, that belief, that ideology. It's not
Mhm.
serving you.
It didn't serve me, and I believed it. I believed it, when my grandmother first said it to me, I was very young, and she said it to me in an environment where I wasn't impacted, right? I was with people that loved me. I was with people who, uplifted me every day, told me I was smart, girl, go get it. My family was like a cheer team, on the way to school, and I do the same thing with my children because we meditate in the mornings and we pray together, and I pump them up because I don't know what's waiting for them in the world. But when they show up, I want them to be sure in who they are. And so my family sent me out that way. But, all families send you out with also a list of warnings. Watch out for this. Don't do that. Don't look this way. And then honestly, when you're When you're raised as a girl, you get a lot of additional limitations and restraints. Don't look this way. That same grandmother who loved me to life told me never to wear red lipstick because it was people would think I was fast, different things. Grandma, I look fabulous in my red lipstick. God rest her soul, but she was from a different generation and time, and I respect it and I love her. But some of the things that she taught me to believe did not serve me well as a young adult, and definitely don't serve me well as I'm very quickly approaching my birthday this weekend, my 43rd birthday.
Well,
Shout
congratulations.
out. I'm
All
a Christmas
right.
Eve baby. So,
All right. That's outstanding. Now,
yeah.
I have to follow up and ask, how much of these self-limiting beliefs are we holding that other people foisted onto us?
Most of them. I mean, if you think about it, I have children, right? And
Mhm.
so I'm a mother of 2 sons. They're 11 and 9 years old, and I've been watching them, obviously since the day they were born. And nobody is braver than a child, you know. And again, this is my boy mom bias coming out, but like nobody is braver than like a 3-year-old boy that just decides that the couch is magically a trampoline and they're going to do a somersault off the couch, roll over, pick up a piece of mail, start throwing it like a ninja dart. I mean, their minds are so wild and creative. And I love seeing that. But the limitations that are put on us start with behavior training, molding, love, care, or, the don't do this and the don't do that. And so we are limitless beings, at birth. And then we just become socialized, right? Mostly for our own good. But sometimes, I mean, to our detriment. And so we just grow up believing all these things and we see so much imagery and nobody knows how you're taking in that imagery. That's the thing. The things that you read and see, I might see it one way, you might see it another way, and nobody understands. But what happens then when we have to come to work together?
And then when it does not align with what we think of ourselves, that's where the
Yeah.
stress comes in?
The stress definitely comes in. Let's bring up a topic that we've been talking about since the 1970s, imposter syndrome, right? Imposter, some people call it imposter experience, because it's not an actual medical diagnosis.
Mhm,
But when you think about the original premise of that study, it just took a group of high performing women PhD students, or I'm sorry, they actually had earned their PhD graduates, and they were experiencing these feelings of doubt and lack. And the researchers just couldn't understand why, and so that's where this term imposter syndrome came from. That these women thought they would be found out somehow, but the real origin of it, in the original study doesn't get enough credit for this, but the real origin, it was their upbringing
mhm.
and also what they had encountered in society as they studied, as they earned their advanced degrees. Some of those experiences of being overtalked, experiences of having their ideas sometimes stolen, and becoming hidden figures in their work. Those are the things that were really the catalyst for those feelings. And nobody was talking about that. They weren't talking about what triggered it. They were just talking about the fact that this group of women didn't believe in themselves. And so it causes um, a lot of stress when you're taught to live a way that just doesn't feel right for you. You get into environments, these things don't serve you well, and you go through life wearing a mask of sorts, right? Just feeling out of place and trying to blend in and play along. And that in itself is a lot. It takes a lot of work to do that, to keep up a ruse. And then if you're another concept in that is self-talk. All these things are interwoven
Mhm.
because you start talking to yourself. I mean, you know that you have an internal monologue that just runs and runs. Sometimes in the morning it tells you, hello, beautiful. And sometimes it says, go back to bed, ugly, because that's what the brain does. The brain makes up things, and you have these thoughts that occur to you automatically because of what you've been taught, what you've seen, what you've been socialized on. But a lot of that chatter in your brain actually comes from experiences, and a lot of it can be negative. So if you have that playing in your head, plus the normal anxiety that exists when you meet a new challenge in the workplace, plus you're colliding with somebody else and their persona, which could be kind or abrasive, whatever, it's like a big old recipe that can turn into a disaster if you're not intentional about recognizing it and guiding yourself through it. And a lot of people just don't have the practical tools to be able to do that. That's why I'm wellness focused.
And so a wellness consultant, you help organizations navigate that pathway for their people.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And we start with the people. We start with the people. A lot of my trainings and workshops are simple dialogues, right? We get together, and thank goodness for Zoom and technology, because this just gives us an opportunity to connect with people all over the world, honestly, because this is the human condition we're talking about. This is not a US thing, a man woman thing. Children deal with this. So this is a human condition. But technology allows us to connect with people, even in large groups. I find if the training is very well designed, and creates a level of introspection, creates a space where people can actually quietly settle into their own thoughts and jot down their thoughts and what they're really wrestling with. um, those settings allow for some pretty intimate, robust discussion, even in large groups. I've facilitated groups as large as 500
Mhm.
and had people on the call, email me later and say, I felt like you were talking directly to me, even though because the group was large, we couldn't have as much interaction as I'd like. But still, you can create environments, learning environments, where people feel like you're just talking to them, where you're speaking right into their condition, because they're able to write during the session or able to record themselves, because not everybody can write, right? Not everybody has hands, So I try to make everything that I design and do accessible for the most people. But I give people an opportunity to record their thoughts and
Okay.
put them into perspective, and we bring those learnings into the session. And you'll be amazed what people are willing to share.
And see, I'm glad you went in that direction, um, because sometimes people think that virtual communications, online platforms are not as engaging, that people cannot have a real
Mm.
emotional connection,
Oh,
but they
quite the
can.
contrary. Quite the
Absolutely.
contrary. Yeah, I find it actually more so. Um, you know, you've seen me in person. I'm only for the world out here. I'm only 4 feet 10, and and people think I
All right.
have a
Wait, 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 wait. Hang on just a second. All right. I have to correct that. On Calm, Clear Conversations, all guests are 6'5".
There we go. Right, we look like it. We look like we're the same height.
There you
I
go.
love this. But the reason I brought up the height is, even with my somewhat smaller stature, in person, people are really intimidated when you're there, when you're asking about these very personal things. It's almost as if they think you're over their shoulder. You could be in the front of a room,
Mhm.
and when somebody has to write something and there's people to their right or their left, they are hesitant, sometimes when you're in person. So I've actually found online to be even more engaging, because typically the person is working remotely or they're in a space where they're alone. And because of some of the approaches that I take, and getting people grounded and centered in themselves, like letting work go temporarily and just getting focused on themselves, I tell them that they owe it to themselves to be honest. And it becomes a very free flowing, introspective conversation. They're talking to themselves and being honest about what they need. And what I do is um, build camaraderie,
Mhm.
right? I call because again, these conditions, these experiences are human. And the first thing I try to do is make sure people don't feel like it's just them. So we establish right away how many people are dealing with this. And when people see the chat light up, see that people will put ones or stars or thumbs up in the chat because they scroll up very quickly. In a room with 10 people, people are very hesitant to do this.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
online has just been a phenomenal way to create breakthroughs with people. And if you know how to facilitate, you can teach anywhere.
Absolutely. It's the, you know, you said camaraderie, and there's connection there because we see that, oh, it's not just me.
It's not just me. And when you do that, you establish community right away, right? Because what is community, right? Is just, a group of people that have some things in common. They're similarly situated, right? They're a class, they're a group, they're a cohort. And so, whatever you want to call it, community creates opportunity, right, for breakthrough and change. Because now, if you have community, right, you can create synergy, you can leverage. And so we talk about, like I said, every single thing that I talk about, it doesn't matter the subject. I always, always, always talk about that individual accountability. And that starts with awareness. They have to know what they're really dealing with and what they need. And then we bring in the elements of corporate responsibility. And people feel more empowered in corporate settings if they know it's not just them. Okay. If they know they have a community, if they know they have a unified voice around a subject matter. And I honestly feel that there's a lot of corporations, I mean, they invite this type of dialogue because it can be a little uncomfortable when people start talking about what their true wellness issues are. It could be a little uncomfortable for leaders to hear that, hey, communication isn't as clear as it needs to be, that I am experiencing microaggressions in the workplace. I do feel like my voice is underrepresented or not being elevated in meetings. It's sometimes hard to hear those things, but companies that are truly investing in diversity, equity, inclusion, in wellness, in productivity, they want to know and they want to get to the answers really, really quickly because they want to help. And so they'll invite a bit of discomfort, but discomfort does not have to result into discord.
True.
It doesn't have to, but it has to be facilitated well.
Absolutely. It has to be a safe environment for someone to feel discomfort.
That's it. And it's I'm happy you said that because it can't be safe just for a party, right?
Mhm.
Everybody has to feel safe. Leaders have to feel safe showing up and hearing some of their behaviors exposed. Now, we don't ever call, we're not, this isn't Instagram. We're not adding anybody, you know, we're not calling anybody out, tagging people on things, but we are talking about behaviors. Um, I actually woke up. I brainstorm all the time,
Mhm.
and I said I'm gonna do a short series on called "Why Do Companies Let the Jerk Stay?" Because that's a really critical wellness issue, and people talk about it. You see all kinds of little those little memes and little posts on all social media platforms with like little cute quotes. People don't quit their jobs, people quit their bosses. Okay, well, why are we not talking about those specific behaviors and telling people exactly how to be collective in addressing them? I'm not saying form a mob and go to the person's office or anything, but what I am saying is companies need to understand and map out what the cost of a bad boss is. They need to map out the risks of people experiencing poor communication, poor direction, um, other things that they do. People being demeaned in meetings or silenced in meetings. People
Mm,
have to understand if you have a jerky person at the helm that silences people when they're trying to innovate, those same people will be quiet when it's time to report and escalate an issue. That becomes a risk management problem
yeah.
in
And
a loss
even
scenario.
if it's not a boss, if it's a team member,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
no one addresses that behavior.
Yeah, when those
Yeah.
behaviors really go unchecked, and I find that a lot of times bad behaviors go unchecked or slightly overlooked because the person is a really smart person or they're a great contributor in another way. And they might just need help building certain skills, but if you're not in an environment that will address the jerk, you know, nothing changes. What happens is you lose the other people who are also um, great, but you're going to lose multiple people trying to save that one person, and
Yeah.
that's it's going to cost you. You know.
Absolutely. I'm sure you've seen, several studies, as have I, where recruiting and retaining an employee cost a lot more. Uh, you know, Recruiting a new employee costs a lot more than retaining the existing talent.
Hmm. For sure. And especially today, I mean, labor costs are all over the place, and that's very. It depends on the industry. But labor costs have been astronomical. Wage inflation has been through the roof, and I say that part of the work that I've done over the past 3 years. And the way I started this business was as an interim executive. So I was working as an interim human resources leader. In some organizations, I worked as an interim risk management, as an interim risk manager, an insurance program manager. So I've worn many hats over the last several years. But in terms of HR, I mean, the cost of recruitment has just gone through the ceiling, and and there's not a lot of guarantees or predictability that your recruitment strategies are really going to bear out the talent that your organization needs. So you're taking a real risk in losing talent when you fail to address certain behaviors.
Mm,
It's the game. The talent game is already, it's hard enough. you know um, there was once a former CEO at a really large staffing company. You can look on my profile. They'll be able to know which one it is. But this CEO, he was phenomenal, and he said, there was once a war on talent, a war for talent. Guess what? Talent won. We lost. Like, let's move on from there. We need solutions. The war for talent, the war on talent is over, and employers lost. And so talent dictates a lot. And just in that vein, this conversation could go so many places, but I love talking about this rise of Black female entrepreneurship, because like that's a positive statistic. I'm in that stat
mhm.
of Black women who have left corporate America for one reason or another, to venture off and start our own enterprises, and we are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs. Um, and in a lot of respects, that rise started off as a wellness issue in the workplace. Something that is rooted in one of the wellness drivers, and it's incredible when you really start tracing back. Why are women leaving? Um, why are women leaving the workplace? Why are Black women in particular leaving the
Yeah,
workplace? Um, we could go all day. So you let me know where
absolutely.
you want to take this conversation.
Well,
'Cause
all right.
I got a couple leads.
All right. So here's my pitch. Uh, we don't have to have just one conversation.
All right, I'm with it.
No, because this is a topic that is not. it's multifaceted.
It is.
So, yeah, I like the possibility. I would love to have another conversation with you to delve into a variety of the areas that we're touching on. Um, what lights you up about what you do right now?
It's the possibility that everybody, I know it sounds altruistic and huge, but just this possibility that people can live well, that they can, especially while they're working. Like I truly believe, like, when you're sacrificing and exchanging your time and talent to further the mission of an organization, even if it's your own, right? Because you're doing it for somebody. When you're working, especially, you need to be well. When you're working, when you're serving others, when you're aligning to try to do something that's, bigger than yourself, I think people just really deserve wellness. And I in a lot of respects. It's I fight to maintain it every day, but I've achieved my wellness, and I've been living like this for now about 12 years, where I live in a very calm state. Doesn't mean I don't have an argument. I do live with three guys, but I got a husband and two sons. Let's keep it 100. But but I maintain my wellness. I maintain my peace. I had, even in corporate, a thriving career. I had mentors, men, women, every age demographic, every race. I mean, and these are experiences that when I talk to people who look like me, they haven't had those experiences. And what I find when I dig a little deeper and I start talking to them about why they didn't have these experiences and what happened, a lot of times I bring them back to something they believe, a way that they
Yeah,
showed up. It wasn't that the environment denied them. Maybe the environment didn't help them, right? But
yeah,
it wasn't denied. And the difference to be made was from within.
hmm,
The initiation was from within. And I say that with a lot of surety, because that was my experience. So I'm just speaking from my own lived experience and not saying that everybody had it this way. So the thing that really drives me is honestly hearing other people's stories and their experiences, but then teaching them the tools that I've learned. Some I've created, to navigate their way to wellness.
okay. And so, all right, one of the things that stood out to me in that exchange, when we're creating something that is bigger than ourselves, even if it's for ourselves, it
Mhm.
still requires wellness.
Mhm. Yes. You have to be well. And, like, what is well? What is
Yeah.
well? Well is knowing, what the purpose is, right? What your purpose is. Why are you doing this? Your why. Listen, I'm a Simon Sinek fan. I'm all about the why, but people need to know how. Okay, I can tell you why all day, and if you don't know how I did this, and I'm not willing to share how I did something, girl, stop talking. I meet people like that all the time. I'm actually going through that in one of my relationships, where somebody keeps telling me what they're doing and why, and will not share with me how. And I'm like, sis, stop talking. But the next part of that, the next driver of wellness, are your relationships.
Yeah.
We have to build out those relationships. And as we build those out and we're in the environment has to lend itself to our wellness. The environment needs to be set up in a certain way for us to be well. And we find then another driver, which is our security in that. And we have to be secure in the environment. And unfortunately, in today's society, that security literally means, like, physically being well, like not being hurt by workplace violence. We have to, be in situations where we're not being verbally or emotionally abused, in the workplace or at home or things like that. But the other part of our security and our safety is psychological safety, the ability to share our ideas without repercussion, the idea that we can take risks in our work and in our endeavors without suffering a backlash. Those are things that really drive our wellness, and that's outside of the things that you normally think of, like the health, like your
Sure.
physical health. You know, even all these things that I mentioned play on your mental health. So I feel like I don't talk as much explicitly about mental health because I don't know a part of this that isn't related to mental health. So,
That's true.
yeah.
That is true. Now, just a guess. Uh, you sound like a voracious reader.
I am. I am. You know, I let me tell you this. Okay, so this is moment of truth.
Hmm.
I am a voracious audio book reader, listener, because here's a truth. Ever since I was younger, I read so slowly, and I'll read something, and my brain will go, "Ooh, let me read that again," and I'll underline and highlight. And I'm one of those people that writes all over the book. I have tabs and I stop to journal. It takes me forever, and I love it. I love it. It's a way that I retain the information and I can share it. But when you're trying to read 12, 13, 14 books a year, it ain't happening when you read that way. So I listen to a ton of audiobooks. I try to honestly get a book in each week.
Okay.
And some books, I'm rereading a favorite book right now.
And that favorite book is?
It's called Psycho-Cybernetics. Psycho-Cybernetics. And I had to reread it because it's phenomenal. But it's the season that I'm in right now of like goal setting and planning and visualization. And that's what the book is about. And so the whole premise behind Psycho-Cybernetics is that you visualize everything that you need to do first. You visualize your success, and you really train your mindset with mindfulness and meditation, and this really extreme habit of visualization. And so it's written by the author's actually deceased. Um, it's written by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, but Dr. Maltz was actually a plastic surgeon, and not so he was a medical doctor, not a PhD doctor. And
Okay.
um, but the updated version of the book was I can't remember the secondary author's name, but there is an updated version of the book from like the earlier mid 2000s.
Hmm.
Dr. Maltz, I think, passed away in like the 70s. Um, but there's an updated version of the book that was written in his voice. So it was such a unique way to do an update, where the secondary author, actually wrote the book as if Dr. Maltz was still alive.
Okay.
So it's the voice of the book is fascinating because he really captured that same voice in the original text. So if you want to just get your life, let
It's,
me just say,
you
PSA,
know,
get your life together and read Psycho-Cybernetics.
it is. I placed that on my wish list. Now,
Yes.
see, all right, when you were talking about the difference between uh, ingesting a book by reading the page and making notes and highlighting and listening to it. So here's one of the things that here's what gives me pause. And I listen to a ton of books. All right. I'm driving down the road and I'll hear a phrase. It's like, dag nabbit, I have
You
got to
can't
get
write
that phrase down.
it down. And now you don't have time to write it down.
Well, yeah, but I will, it's like, all right, I will the next moment that I can safely, I will make a clip of that line, that sentence, that phrase that grabbed me, that demanded to be uh, extracted and stood on its own. So I mean, it's yes, um, and so that book is on my list. Uh, One that I've finished recently that, because, hey, I'm always going to give a book recommendation. If I ask you a question, hey, what are you reading? What do you recommend?
Yes,
I
I'm
have
the
to
same.
give an answer as well. So
Absolutely.
one I just finished is Together by Atul Gawande. Um, and it is about the power of connection and community and
Oh, that's
how that
perfect.
has been disappearing. So Atul Gawande, he's a surgeon, and it's we are all connected, and the human experiences, they matter. Um, and it was just a wonderful book. Uh, Actually, know what? I got that wrong. So there are two books, and I attributed the book to a different author. Together is Vivek Murthy. He
Mm,
was Surgeon General. Being Mortal is Atul Gawande. Both are fabulous books, and I absolutely encourage both of them to be listened to or read, or however you are going to ingest and apply the ideas.
perfect. I will definitely check those out.
And I'm placing them in the comments so that, yeah. And when we have our follow-up conversation, because, well, there's so much more to talk about, I want to hear how you liked the books, and I will share with you how I liked uh, Psycho-Cybernetics.
I promise you'll enjoy it.
All right. So, Princess Castleberry, speaker, wellness consultant, friend,
I like that.
thank you so much for this conversation. I have gotten a lot out of it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the platform. Just thank you for your kindness. And from the moment I met you, you've been the same. So I always appreciate in this ever changing world a wonderful degree of sameness. So
Likewise, because when you meet Princess in person, and you should, uh, she is, see, this is the subdued princess.
it is.
Exactly.
That's me.
So, but
Ain't getting people too much. No.
it is, see, that's why it's wonderful to meet you in person,
Yeah,
because
I let it
you
hang.
are all that. I mean, and it's like,
I let
yeah,
it hang. I let it I like to have a good time. I just do. I like to hug people. I'm gonna shake your hand real hard, and I don't know. I just don't know another way to be that's going to serve me well and serve and it serves people around me. For me to be me, it empowers people. Um, People walk up to me and they're like, "I like you." And I'm like, "I like me too, and thank you. I like you too." You know? I do. I love myself. I love myself, and it allows me to pour out. I pour out a lot. Like I said, I live with 3 men. Woo! I pour out a lot of love, and you know what? Loving on me fills me back up, and they love on me too, but still, it's life is so much better
absolutely.
if you know who you are, you show up confidently, people will get the fullness of you. I bring it all out, so.
Yes, you do. And I am grateful. So
Thank you.
again, thank you very much. And we'll schedule another chat soon.
Let's do it.
Interested in learning more about any whoops. That button. Interested in learning more about any of the items that you've seen in today's session? Leave a comment below. Interested in being a guest? Leave a comment below. I help event planners and organizers produce virtual events. Learn how I can support your virtual event by connecting or leaving a comment. Thanks for watching.